Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We see there's a bit of people joining already. This is great news for me and for Ido. Um, and I will give it just 1 minute for people to join, and then we'll be starting right off. Um, just a bit of introductions. My name is Karen Hassin. I'm an enablement specialist here at NetApp. I support the FSX for ONTAP product, and specifically, I'm working with VMware workloads. So with that, I think we can start, Ido. And let me introduce Ido. Ido is a senior product manager here at NetApp. He's supporting Amazon FSX for NetApp ONTAP. He brings over 15 years of experience working with VMware environments, and he's played a pivotal role in the continuous innovation projects surrounding FSX for NetApp ONTAP, and he leads the new feature development for our own NetApp Workload Factory, which we will be looking into later on during this session. Um, so with that, I just want to welcome everyone. I see there's still people joining. Today, we're going to be talking about the seamless VMware migration with Amazon Elastic VMware Service and Amazon FSX for NetApp ONTAP. All right, let's get the ball rolling. All right. So in a previous webinar that we did, we talked about the VMware modernization path. And I just want to kind of refresh for those that were not there. There are different options for VMware workloads that you want to modernize on AWS. The first path and the easiest way is to relocate your workload. And what that means is that you take your VMs, you continue to work on VMware, and you just extend that to the cloud with VMware Cloud Foundations. And here's where Amazon EBS comes in. And this is where we're going to be focusing on today. The second option that you have is to rehost your VMware. And here you move your VMs out of VMware and you work on Amazon EC2, you rehost those VMs. And the third option is to re-platform to containers. And this is where you containerize applications with Amazon ECS or EKS. This does require a more effort, and it's a more complex endeavor. So these are the options out there for your VMware workloads on Amazon, on AWS. And today we're going to be focusing, as I said, on Amazon EBS. But before we start, and because I know Amazon EBS is a new product, I would like to set out a poll today. So we would like to know where you're at in your AWS migration journey. Are you just exploring? You're trying to find out what's going on? You're already planning to move to the cloud? Is something that you're already doing? You're in the middle of the project of the transition, or you've already migrated? Doesn't matter. We just want to know. And the second question is, how familiar are you with Amazon EBS? Um, and Amazon EBS has been talked about since last year. However, it came out GA in August of this year. So there's been a lot of buzz around it, but we want to know how much you know. Are you very familiar? You've heard of it? Just let us know where you stand. Let's give it a second, and we'll see. We'll use this information to help us kind of tweak the information we'll be sharing with you. All right. Okay. We can see that most of you are just kind of trying to understand what's going on. What are the options out there? So that's great. And I think this is perfect for the material that we want to share today. All right. And yeah, wow, it's good. We see people are familiar, somewhat familiar. Okay, we have a few, surprisingly, more than I thought, which is great. But we do have like 40% of you that don't know. So with that, I think we can start. Let's introduce Amazon EVS. Ido, can you give us like what is Amazon EVS, Elastic VMware Service?
Sure. So, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. And I'll try to quickly introduce Amazon Elastic Service, aka Amazon EVS, which is a new service that has been initially introduced in reInvent 24 and launched as GA in last August. EVS actually allows the deployment of VCF, VMware VCF, within the AWS cloud, natively within a customer environment inside a customer VPC. And it provides a like-for-like experience as you've been running the Cloud Foundation Suite in your own on-premise data center. Karen has showed the migration option slide, and EVS actually strongly relate to the rehost option, as due to the fact that it's a very similar experience to what you have on premise. You can just natively lift and shift your application using native migration tools from VMware and other third parties, and not do any heavy-duty re-architecting on the application or the infrastructure layer. Just rehost those in cloud immediately and start your modernization journey.
Okay. And I guess one of the benefits of EVS is exactly what you said. You don't have to rewrite your applications. You don't have to re-platform them. You literally continue to use the same VMware architecture that you have, and you literally extend it to the cloud. So Ido, what about those legacy applications that are running on VMware that I know people are concerned about moving to the cloud because they are concerned about the risk that that entails?
This is actually a good question because there lies a good point to make. So as you mentioned, those legacy applications are the Achilles heel in any cloud migration project. If we just take a look at, let's say, native cloud operating environment, even the operating system flavors and levels are severely limited, and sometimes those legacy applications do not lie within the cloud support matrix. Also within the application, there's sometimes application where there is loss of knowledge and no motivation to do any changes as part of this migration project.
Okay.
Coming
And
back to my last answer, we mentioned
yeah,
that EVS actually runs a fully functional vCloud Foundation Suite within a customer environment. And that creates a like-for-like experience to what we have within the on-premise data center. And with that, you can guarantee that everything that is operating within your data center environment and is running within your VMware environment can actually be lifted and shifted and rehosted within your AWS cloud as it is without doing any changes, not in the infrastructure level and not in the application level. And therefore, it's an ideal solution for moving those legacy applications into cloud. It also gives us the ability to modernize at our own pace, start with running within a cloud environment, enjoy the cloud benefit, maybe develop some interfaces to native cloud services, and while you're at it, start planning your next step within your modernization journey.
okay. And what about the licensing? How does that work? I've heard some news, some changes were announced on VMware Explorer recently.
Yeah, so that's a good point. So long story short, licensing works in a BYOL methodology. So customer needs to bring their own VCF license to the cloud and later on the AWS infrastructure and their deployed environment. Getting a bit into the details, so VMware has announced a change in their licensing policy in the latest VMware Explore event. And from that point, moving forward, hyperscalers will no longer resell a licensed solution within their cloud environment. And actually, the operating model has changed a bit, in which, as we mentioned, a customer is responsible to bring their own VCF license, a license which is eligible to run in the cloud, into the virtualization environment, into the AWS environment. And actually, the EVS service automates the environment deployment with the customer licensing.
Okay. And thank you. And what about the control of the VMware environment? I'm sure we have VMware administrators in the audience. They like to manage and control their environment. How does that work on EVS?
So here lies a fundamental change that AWS did, which is, by the way, also based on customer feedback they collected. If you look at VMware on cloud services such as VMware Cloud on AWS, running on Amazon, or Google Cloud VMware Engine running on Google Cloud, the concept is more of a managed service concept, meaning that the service deploys the environment, but also maintains a specific level of management. So infrastructure management, also in the VMware perspective, is sometimes delegated into the hyperscaler or the service provider. While in EVS, the aim was to provide, as we previously mentioned, a like-for-like experience to what you have on-prem, and therefore the decision was made to actually delegate full control of the environment to the service consumer, to the VMware administrator. Following deployment of your virtualization environment, your VCF deployment within EVS, you'll get the keys to the kingdom. You'll get your vCloud Foundation Suite license. You're able to acquire your ES6i credentials. You're able to acquire your vCenter admin credentials. And you have complete control of the environment and the infrastructure. Everything from the VMware perspective is actually managed by the customer. It's important to note that there are AWS business partners who are working on different levels of managed service offering to customers who find this a better option. So basically, I think the keyword here is flexibility. You start by managing everything, and you can delegate control as you wish with AWS business partners.
Okay, that's great to know, and for customers to know that there are already partners that tested Amazon EVS during the gated preview, so they're very familiar with the product. Okay, let's talk about the use cases with Amazon EVS. What are the most frequently used cases that we see?
Okay, so when talking about the use cases, the major four are listed here in the slide before us. And the first one, which we already discussed, is actually migrating fast into a public cloud environment. Rehosting is much faster than any re-platform or relocating effort, due to the fact that it actually bears no fundamental application or infrastructure change. And therefore, customers can land quickly within a public cloud environment and start from there. Another popular use case for EVS or any VMware on cloud deployment is actually data center expansion. When we're talking about dynamic workloads, about applications that have variable load through the season, anybody talking about e-commerce and Black Friday, for example,
Yeah.
public cloud is very good in providing elastic capacity, so you can actually deploy dynamically your virtualization environment, connect it seamlessly into your data center environment, for example, with VMware H6 Layer 2 connectivity, and have your access capacity or your burst capacity deployed within cloud, and later on decommissioned as you don't need it anymore. An additional use case, a very popular use case for cloud and public cloud VMware, is disaster recovery. Customer wishing to have a disaster recovery environment in public cloud due to infrastructure management consideration or other consideration can easily deploy a virtualization environment and use variable replication solutions as they do on premise to actually provide a disaster recovery in public cloud. And last but not least, EVS is a really good starting point for a customer's cloud journey due to the fact that if we look at the first use case, it's really easy to rapidly migrate your environment without major changes. But then when you're on cloud and you have the ability to start leveraging public cloud services such as AWS, S3, Lambda, etc., and you're able to start your modernization journey at your own pace. You can do rehosting effort, migrate some of your environment to AWS native compute. You can containerize, you can migrate to manage Kubernetes services, etc. Use fully managed database services. So it's a really good stepping point to start a public cloud and a modernization journey.
Definitely. I think it's a great stepping stone into the modernization journey, and it just makes it easy. Like it's an easy transition into the cloud, and then you can have new apps come up and being born in the cloud and just start from there. Okay, so with that, I want to ask another question. We want to know how familiar you are with Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP, which is the other topic that we're going to be touching on today. Um, and while people are answering, Ido, I know you were involved in the gated preview for Amazon EVS, and you were testing FSx for ONTAP with Amazon EVS. Can you give us like a super short, how was that experience?
Yeah, for sure. So the idea we had in mind is to rapidly come up with a solution to provide external storage to EVS customers uh, with native AWS solutions. I guess we're gonna touch base on this
We're
and
gonna do,
expand it.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's a really critical part of being successful with the public cloud VMware service to have this utmost flexibility to deploy multiple workload profiles, and external storage is a part of it. Therefore, it was really important for us to try to provide a solution fast and to provide a very flexible solution. And I guess we're going to touch base on that point also as we continue.
yeah. And I see the results already. We see quite a few, like most people have heard of it, but we have about a quarter of the people online that are not familiar with FSx for ONTAP. So this is great. I think it's a great opportunity for you to be familiarized with this product. And let's start talking about Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP. And you will see one of the things I want to introduce first. Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP is an AWS storage service that was tested, as Ido said, it was tested extensively, and it's certified to work with Amazon EVS. Now, Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP, or FSx for ONTAP in short, um, it's a first-party AWS fully managed service that's built on NetApp's popular ONTAP technology. Um, and because it is fully managed and supported by AWS, you buy it directly through AWS. It is not a marketplace offering. And because it is first party, it seamlessly integrates with the 200 plus AWS services in the ecosystem. So and another thing that it's super important to know that you can use your AWS credits and participate in migration funded programs with AWS. It is an AWS service based on, again, I'll reiterate, on ONTAP technology. And that's really one of the big things that we have here. And it being fully managed means that um, you will be responsible for configuring your storage, but you're not doing the upgrades, you're not doing updates, you're not doing maintenance, you're not doing break and fix, you're not worried about drive stability. You just need to procure more storage whenever you need it. Um, and it's a few minutes. So this is really what Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP is. And really, um, the question that I have for you, Ido, is we know that Amazon EVS comes with vSAN. It's a hyperconverged environment with vSAN. Why should we consider adding another storage like FSx for ONTAP?
Yeah, that's a good question, and there are multiple reasons to do so. But I think starting my answer here, I want to focus on one key reason here, which is around solution alignment and cost optimization. So vSAN actually is based on a hyperconverged architecture where in cloud you actually have a singular uniform building block that has a fixed amount of compute capacity, be it vCPUs and memory, and a fixed amount of storage capacity that comes from internal NVMe drives. And the way to address specific customer requirement for running a specific virtualization environment in cloud is actually to tailor and address all of those three pillars from this uniform building block. The question is what happens when the architecture becomes, let's call it asymmetrical, unaligned. We call it technically storage bound. So for example, storage is much more higher in proportion in comparison to vCPU and memory requirement. In that case, you actually provision additional compute node to use their storage to compensate for the storage requirement while leaving the CPU and memory resources idle. As you all know, in cloud, capacity costs money, and therefore you're paying for resources you're not using, and you create economic inefficiency. How does external storage fit into this equation? By actually deploying external data stores into your solution and addressing the excess storage capacity with this external storage solution, leaving the compute node to address the vCPU memory requirement and only a part of the storage requirement, which is proportional to the vCPU and memory requirement. Therefore, by doing so, you create tighter alignment with the deployed configuration and the actual requirement of the virtualization environment, and you optimize your cost significantly. There are additional reasons to deploy FSx for ONTAP, but I think for now, let's focus on that reason. This is the key reason to do so.
I agree. And I think this is the main impact that we bring to the table. It's to the bottom line. We can save up to 50% in cloud costs just by adding FSx for ONTAP. So I want to reiterate, because this is the real important reason why, like one of the main reasons. You can always bring in FSx for ONTAP for all of the other great thing it does, because it's an enterprise level storage service. It has a lot of features and functionalities that bring a lot of value, but specifically for EVS, it's exactly this, the cost optimization that really is impactful in terms of up to 50%. In terms of dollars saved, it's huge. So can you just kind of double down on that cost optimization and decoupling, Ido, really fast?
Yes, so maybe just a quick recap and some highlights. So as mentioned, we can actually add FSx for ONTAP, into an EVS environment as a data store solution, as external data store solution. Also, I want to hook this in. I'm monitoring the questions in the chat, and I see a question regarding multi-protocol access. Does FSx unlock multi-protocol access? So in a short answer, the answer is yes. Longer answer will show the multiple deployment option. You have block and file options for data store and what we call guest attached storage. And we're gonna expand on that moving forward. But just to let you know that the answer for your question, the short one is yes. And you can actually take all of those data store or guest attached storage solution and actually provision storage to a VM according to its requirement. Therefore, you actually reduce the amount of excess storage needed on top of the compute requirement. You right size your environment. You provision the exact amount of cluster host which is needed for your compute and memory capacity. And you take FSx for ONTAP, which is a dedicated storage solution, and provision the access capacity on top of FSx for ONTAP, leading to significant cost optimization. There's also a very important pillar to double down on here, which is partially hidden cost. If you provision using hyperconverge and your storage bound, you're actually provisioning vCPU and memory capacity that is idle within your cluster environment because you need additional storage. You still need to license this capacity in terms of VCF license, which is based on your compute cores. By actually aligning to the amount of capacity you need to run your workloads, you also reduce the VCF licensing fragment of your cost. So you have your AWS operating cost and you have your VMware licensing cost. Both are optimized by actually tailoring the solution with external storage.
Yeah, definitely. And that's not part of the 50% that we talked about. This is an extra that we cannot quantify, but it's depending on your own licensing costs. Okay, next is the improvement in reliability by the fact that we literally can get rid of the VMware snapshot during the backup process. Can you further explain a little bit
Yeah,
regarding
okay.
this?
So let's drill down into this example of backup optimization. So actually, when you're deploying FSx for ONTAP into your environment, you're deploying a solution which is based on the well-known NetApp ONTAP solution running in on-premise data centers for several decades and leading the market as an enterprise-grade storage platform. Throughout those years, a lot of features and functionality has been introduced, a lot of it into virtualization environment. We started our journey by stating that an EVS environment is a like for an on-prem environment, and that leads to a point in which you can actually leverage all of those on-premise features and capabilities in your cloud environment. One of them is the use of the well-known ONTAP snapshots as part of your VMware backup flow. By integrating those ONTAP snapshots into your backup flow, same as a lot of NetApp users are doing on-prem, you're actually reducing the use of VMware native snapshots and you reduce the overhead those bear on backup workflows, and especially as they are deleted and incur on access load and performance. Therefore, you can easily optimize your backup flow by use of ONTAP technology. This is one example out of many. Other examples include multi-availability zone deployments, which are supported with FSx for ONTAP that can increase EVS reliability, region-to-region replication, which can be done with ONTAP replication, and last but not least, ransomware protection built into the solution with NetApp ONTAP ARP and ARP AI.
Which is a topic of its own, the ARP, actually. All right, and next, the third, let's say, main benefit that comes from adding FSx for ONTAP to your EVS environment has to do with the ease of migration, especially for those that are using ONTAP on premises and that can leverage SnapMirror. And actually, we have a question, Ido, on the chat, on the Q&A, sorry, that someone asked, can we use SnapMirror to copy VMs from an on-prem vCenter environment to EVS? So I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah. So first excellent question. Short answer is yes, and let's double click on that and expand on that for a second. When we're talking about is migration, I think there are two elements that we need to consider here. So the first one, how does the bits move from point A to point B? And when you're using an ONTAP environment, you can actually leverage ONTAP replication to do so, which can optimize data delivery, reduce the payload to be delivered, and address for migration at scale. And this is a very good option to rapidly migrate your environment from on-premise to cloud when you're an ONTAP user. But that's one part of the equation. The second part is around the learning curve. We mentioned that TVS is a native environment running VCF, and at least for the VMware, VMware part of the equation, that's flattening this learning curve. But due to the fact that you might result in changing some of those operating parameters and you're still operating within a public cloud environment, there are new things to be aware of. By actually baking FSx for ONTAP into the mix for an ONTAP user, you get a like-for-like experience, a full-blown ONTAP experience in cloud. You have the same feature set and storage concepts that you're managing your environments on. And therefore, learning curve is again drastically flattened, and you can easily get up within your public cloud environment and start working from day one without additional enablement. And that's also very important. We have a question here around data copy across regions, and that's a good point to also address this question because, yeah, Snap Mirror can actually do inter-region copy, and you can provide inter-region replication for your EVS environment for the purpose of disaster recovery, for example, very easily. Given the events of the past 2 weeks, I think this is an interesting topic to have a webinar on its own, but just to make a long story short here, yeah, if you want to address concerns about regional availability, ONTAP is a very good solution to go because you can easily replicate your environments at scale and move it across regions or even across hyperscalers.
Right. And that brings me to the next question. So what happens for VMware? Say you have a VMware user on-prem right now who's listening to us who doesn't use ONTAP today. How would that work? How would that management work for that type of customer? How would that look like?
So answering that question, I would like to double click on what we discussed earlier around the gated preview and the breadth of support that we have for FSx for ONTAP. So the idea for us within private preview was fast delivery, but also the utmost flexibility. And it was important for us to test, certify, validate both block and file solution, both for data store and guest attached storage. So actually, with FSx for ONTAP, you have very wide support matrix, and you can actually use block-based data stores with the iSCSI protocol, file-based data store with NFS v3 or NFS 4.1. By the way, both of those have storage level optimizations and tight integrations into the VMware solution that ONTAP deliver, for example, via AI. And you can also provision guest attached storage and connect it directly to a VM. There's also a question that was asked around is there a solution to migrate my RDM-based environment from on-premise? RDM being role device mapping directly attached to host. And the answer for that is yes. With FSx for ONTAP, we can provision guest attached storage. You have a like-for-like environment with your volumes directly attached to your virtual machine, be it block, be it your file shares, and you can just natively migrate those. If you're an ONTAP user, you can use ONTAP-based replication. If you are a third-party user, you can just use any software-based migration solution. And coming back to third-party solution users not using ONTAP today on-premise, running block or file workloads within their VMware and within VMware data stores. VMware migration to EVS, actually the main path to do so using HCX, which is a part of the VCF environment. HCX actually extends data center networking at the layer 2 level and can provide seamless VMware migration. That's another question that we have within the webinar. Can I migrate my virtual machines online and without interference and no downtime? And the answer to that is yes. So HCX, when you actually hook those data centers on-prem to cloud, creates a vMotion-like migration experience, and you can seamlessly migrate a VM from on-premise to cloud without any downtime. Depending on user preference, a lot of users also use HCX bulk migration option, which actually migrates a large scale of virtual machine at a specific point in time with minimal downtime. But also for those sensitive VMs, you can consider using online non-disruptive migration. And the beauty in HCX is that it's storage agnostic. You do not care what's the actual operating environment. You do not care which storage solution you run on-prem. You just migrate at a VM level, at an ES6i cluster level, and it's transparent. And FSx for ONTAP can provide a very good landing area due to the fact that you can choose block or file data store or guest attached storage that can actually fit to any use case that you're using on premise.
Thank you, Ido. And I think that's just the right way to go into this next topic that we wanted to show, the supported architectures in FSx for ONTAP in Amazon EVS. So I think you kind of covered it, so we can move fast through it and then show the team online the different architectures, how they look like. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I'll quickly run through it. So initially, we actually certified NFS data stores with NFS v3. And we've recently added NFS 4.1 support. So actually, from a data store perspective, you choose the NFS protocol of your liking. You can also deploy iSCSI data stores from FSx for ONTAP and connect them to your EVS environment if you're a block fan. And from a guest attached storage, we have NFS 3 NSMB3, which was initially certified. Recently, we also tested and validate block-based guest attached storage. So an RDM solution is actually covered within an FSx for ONTAP EVS environment. And also a public file share. We're looking into additional solutions and additional supported ways of connectivity and protocols. So stay tuned here. We're going to get some surprises towards you very soon.
And it's all about flexibility and providing the user, all of the options available. Here's the NFS and iSCSI data store options. Do you want to go over them?
Yeah, so quickly, just touching point on very important element. I briefly managed that EVS is actually deployed within the customer native AWS environment and within a customer VPC. This is again a fundamental difference from solutions like VMware Cloud on AWS or other hyperscaler solution, which use a dedicated operating environment, aka shadow VPC. EVS is actually deployed within a native customer VPC. The customer set up the VPC and deploys EVS. EVS uses native AWS subnet, and there is a service access subnet being set up to every EVS virtualization environment. The simplest way to actually set up an FSx for ONTAP as an external storage solution to EVS is just to provision it deploy FSx for ONTAP within this service access subnet, which is a very wide subnet. And then it's just natively connected into the ES6i VLANs and the host, the VMK management VLAN or any other dedicated VLAN within ES6i without any complex networking setup or complex routing or multi-hop networking, leading to a very straightforward solution and a very efficient solution in performance-wise.
And the guest attached?
Guest attach is slightly different. So to connect VMware into the native AWS network and the outside world, we're using a new component called VPC route servers. VPC route servers are deployed as part of the EVS solution and creates a BGP connection between the VMware EVS environment and the outside world, aka the AWS networking. Using this connection, we can actually add Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP into the VPC route table and add routes into the virtualization environment, into the overlay networks of the virtualization environment, therefore having the ability to provision storage directly at the VMware level as guest attached storage.
Okay, and now that we've covered Amazon EVS and FSx for ONTAP, I want to talk to you a little bit about Workload Factory. And for those that are not familiar with Workload Factory, it is a software as a service that is free. It's for free. It comes from NetApp, and it allows you to plan and orchestrate your workloads on FSx for ONTAP. It helps you plan, it helps you deploy, and it helps you manage your data. It has different, let's say pillars. So you have for databases, for general storage, and of course we have for VMware. And actually Ido here is one of the people that works on developing new features for Workload Factory, specifically for VMware workloads. And here, really, what I want to show you is we have two tools within Workload Factory that help EVS, Amazon EVS. The first one is the TCO calculator. And what it is, it's a tool that will help you quantify the impact of adding FSx for ONTAP to your EVS deployment. It is easy to use. You will see later, actually, we're going to show a demo of this tool. So you'll see how it works, how to navigate it. It's really not complex at all. You just have to input your information, and it will show you what are your savings and where they're coming from. And the second the tool that we have is the migration advisor. Once you've determined what your savings are and you've made your business case and you're ready to move forward to planning your deployment, this is the tool to use. One of the great benefits of precisely Workload Factory is that it allows you to align your deployment to AWS well-architected framework. Ido, can you further explain what is this well-architected? What does that mean?
Yeah, so within an AWS environment or any other environment, to actually have a solution running in the best way possible, you have to follow some guidelines and best practices. And in cloud, when you're deploying a solution, especially a solution that has so many moving parts, such as EVS with FSx for ONTAP, you have to follow some guidelines to make it work optimally. Here comes the well-architected framework to your head. It's actually a collection of best practices, guidelines, deployment guidelines, and such that allows you to make sure that your environment is running at the best of its capability. Within Workload Factory, a major part of our mission is to make sure that customers have deployments that follow this well-architected framework. And we have multiple feature sets from day zero operations, so planning and deployment and migration, and up to a point where the environment is frequently being used to make sure that the environment is configured according to all of these guidelines, and in case drift occurs, which natively will occur, we'll know to indicate this drift and to recommend how to handle it and steer the environment back to its optimum.
Okay, and I think now it's time for us to take a look at the demo of Workload Factory. I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, so sharing my screen. So let's take a quick glance at the EVS TCO calculator. As mentioned by the poll, so a lot of you are just starting your journey with EVS, and it's a good first place to visit to understand whether your environment has value with deploying FSx4 ONTAP alongside EVS and what's the estimated value. So following login to NetApp Workload Factory, you can navigate to the VMware tile where you have an Explore Saving menu. You can choose Amazon Elasticsearch from it, and actually the TCO calculator will launch. In the TCO calculator, our first and foremost important consideration was to create a very easy experience that can provide indication immediately and with minimal effort. And therefore, what we've chosen to do is to allow users to specify 4 preferences to get an estimate on his environment. So we only require the amount of physical CPUs that you'll need in your VMware environment, physical memory that you'll need in your VMware environment to actually support those virtual machines, and the amount of storage that you would like to deploy within your cloud environment. Following all of this, you can actually tweak your billing plan, the billing plan that you would like to use, so the length of your commit. You can use on demand 1 year or 3 year. One important point about the billing plan, the impact here is mostly around the EVS cluster nodes, which are based on EC2 Metal instance that has long-term engagement optimization options. So initially, you'll see that you have a highlight of your TCO prediction, and you can see that in your environment, by deploying FSx4 ONTAP, you have an estimated saving of 32% of the overall AWS infrastructure cost. So this excludes VCF licensing, which is further optimized, and an estimated monthly saving of roughly $17,000. You can further scroll down and drill down into the calculation and understand where are those savings coming from. So you're able to see that actually, let me just hide this. So the amount of required hosts for both your compute and storage capacity with this configuration is 9 hosts. The amount of hosts required for CPU and memory only is 5 hosts. So you actually have an access of 4 hosts that are provisioned to accommodate storage environment in a hyperconverged solution, leading to almost 24,000 USDs spent on this capacity. Actually, you can replace this configuration by standing up an FSx4 ONTAP with those capabilities and with this monthly cost, leading to saving optimization due to standing up only 5 hosts and FSx4 ONTAP. And this is actually the bottom line here. That's where savings are coming from. You can also drill down into the component of your pricing. If you're looking at an EVS configuration, there are actually 3 pillars of pricing. Major pillar is actually the compute node. That's the major cost. There's an additional cost for the service control plane on top. And there's another component, which is the VPC route servers we previously discussed, but this is marginal cost. And you can have all of those with FSx4 ONTAP, so adding a 4 pillar while optimizing the top 3. And in here, you can actually understand that the result of actually adding FSx4 ONTAP for the configuration specified here, which is pretty small, just 150 TIBs of storage, is it can result in 200,000 USD estimated overall yearly savings, which is nice.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the most important is that you will not stop paying for stuff that you're not using. That's really what it is, and that's what the decoupling does. Um, let's
Just 1 second before I give
okay.
it back to you. So
Yes.
just 2 quick follow-ups that you can do after estimating your cost. So you have the ability to contact an expert with your results and getting more information on the exact configuration, what is needed, maybe some deployment question, migration questions, specific application interoperability inquiries, and maybe some cloud topologies. So our experts are at your service, and you can just click here, and it will shoot an email to one of them, which will reach out to you following. And you have the ability to continue and plan your EVS migration and automate the deployment of FSx for ONTAP based on your TCO calculation. By clicking here, you'll be redirected into the Migration Advisor, which will allow you to configure an environment, plan it, and automatically deploy it based on the well-architected framework guidelines. And
All right.
with that, I'll lead it back to you.
I have, yeah, thank you. And there is a question related to the TCO calculator we just saw. It says, will the TCO calculator replace the VMware VMC sizer? And does it help calculate both compute and storage requirements?
Yeah, so the TCO calculator and the migration advisor can act as a replacement to the VMware VMC sizer. Actually, the VMC sizer, by its name, was built and architected to support VMware Cloud on AWS, which is different in deployment from AWS Elastic VMware Service. For now, there is a certain dimension of uniformity due to the fact that we're using the same compute nodes from VMC to EVS. There are still some delicacies that are different between the two. For example, VMC has a starting point of 2 cluster nodes, while EVS today has a starting point of 4 cluster nodes. VCF version might differ moving forward. Additional nodes are going to get supported. The size of management appliances are different. So the sizing made from VMC sizer will not be 100% accurate when you're deploying EVS, and you'll need a specialist to tailor it in. The idea in the roadmap for Workload Factory, Migration Advisor, and TCO Calculator is to provide a very exact and detailed sizing experience that will allow you to also estimate the required compute capacity that you need to set up in cloud. And you'll get a detailed solution which you can take and validate with your AWS counterparts and then automate its deployment using Workload Factory.
Thank you, Do. So here what you're seeing on your screen, I'm sharing the link to the TCO calculator. Actually, the link will take you, if you haven't registered with Workload Factory, will take you to the registration page. And from there, once you're registered, you can go to the TCO calculator. I remind you that it is a free service. It's not something that you have to pay. And before we open up for the questions that we have quite a few waiting for us to answer, I just want to recap what we covered today about Amazon EVS being the fastest and most secure modernization path for VMware workloads on AWS. It lets you keep your VPC, so you continue to use the same tools as if you were on-prem. And because the primary storage on Amazon EVS is vSAN, you will be on a hyper-converged infrastructure. So if your workload exceeds the host storage capacity, you will find yourself adding expensive hosts just for the storage. And that's really what the TCO calculator helps you visualize. And by adding FSx for ONTAP as an external data store, you can decouple that storage from compute and really reduce costs by up to 50%. So let's open it up for the questions, Ido. We have quite a few.
Yeah, so I can start.
Yeah, go ahead.
I can start answering. And the first question I have here is, how do we map vSAN to VPC? And the concept here is quite simple. So in EVS, when you deploy EVS, the service actually orchestrates and automates the deployment of your VCF environment. You provide some information on the size of your environment, amount of cluster nodes, your networking settings. So what are the seeders that you, for example, would like to use within your VMware networking? What's your route server environment, etc. Or how's your VPC looking like? What's your DNS to be used, etc. And actually deployment is being orchestrated where vSAN is deployed as part of the solution. So you enter the vSAN license key as part of your EVS deployment flow, and the service automatically will stand up the environment with vSAN deployed on all of the hosts. And of course, initially you have your singular management domain with your vSAN environment deployed as part of the solution. There is a question about sharing more detail about license if we move VCF environment to EVS. So I see, Karen, that you started answering
I
that.
started answering, writing it. Yeah.
And another question, I think we've discussed this, but I've seen this repeating again around downtime for moving a VM to AWS. So if you leverage VMware HCX, you can select those VMs that are very sensitive to you. And if you set up this layer 2 connectivity between your on-prem environment and your cloud environment, you can actually seamlessly transfer those in cloud. Of course, this has some implications around performance, etc. And you need to set up your architecture in a way that can support this type of migration. But if you have some sensitive VMs that cannot stand even minimal downtime, that's a very good solution to consider. There were two questions around backup integration. One of them is, can the like of Vim and Commvault also work within an AWS EVS environment with FSx for ONTAP? And the answer here is a definite yes. So as mentioned, EVS is a like-for-like solution in comparison to an on-prem environment. So every third-party vendor that validates his solution in EVS can have it up and running within the environment. And the idea here is that it would be really easy for customers to bring their own solutions. So my suggestion would be to customers who are interested in having a third-party backup solution, just work with your vendor, address your vendor, and work with AWS to have this certified and tested and validated within an EVS environment. And from that point forward, you can just use it on cloud. Yeah, so there's another question to discuss integration with Snap Center, and I think in here it open brackets to a wider answer around ONTAP solutions. So what we're trying to do with FSx for ONTAP in EVS is actually to provide those ONTAP customers who know and like all of the solution ecosystem around VMware integration, a like-for-like experience when they go on cloud, because we see it as a major power and benefit for those customers. As part of this effort, we actually went ahead and certified two initial solutions, and we're working to add more as fast as we can. And those two are NetApp Disaster Recovery as a service, allowing you to actually automate and orchestrate your on-prem to cloud disaster recovery with a native SaaS solution within the NetApp console. And this solution is supported for EVS. And the second solution is local protection, local application, and VMware protection using Snap Center and Snap Center VMware solution. So we validated actually that Snap Center VMware solution can be seamlessly deployed within an EVS environment and used to protect your virtual machines with tight VMware integration and all of the Snap Center VMware automation and usability feature set.
All right,
And
I think we're on time, Ido. We're just like at the top of the hour. I want to thank everyone for joining, for staying on with us and listening to what we have to say. I hope it was of benefit to you. Um, Please remember to fill out the survey form that you'll get after this session. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Ido.
Thank you.